Get ready to turn the West End of Glasgow yellow at Off the Beatson Track. Join Beatson Cancer Charity on Sunday the 24th of August for a feel-good 10k walk, packed with music, laughs and loads of fun. Bring your pals, your wee ones and even bring the dog. Every step supports people facing cancer across the west of Scotland. Sign up now at beatsoncancercharity.org and make a difference with Off the Beatson Track, the brightest walk in Glasgow. See you then.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Beatson Talks. I'm Laura Boyd, and this episode is a little bit different because normally I have the lovely job of interviewing people about their experiences with cancer and their relationship with the Beatson. But this time, the tables are being turned. What have I let myself in for? Well, I'm going to be interviewed by the wonderful Gillian Hailstones, who is the CEO of Beatson Cancer Charity, Queen of the Beatson, as we like to call her. But Gillian, no pressure. What are you going to ask me?
Hello, how are you,
Hello,
Laura?
I'm good, thank you.
And thank you for that introduction. That's probably the best introduction I've ever had.
Put that on your CV.
No, we were really keen that in this episode we get a chance to hear a bit more about your story, because each of the episodes we've had up until now, you have spoken so beautifully to individuals that have come along to share their story, and you have given us wee snippets of your own experience, and you share that so beautifully, but we felt it was time that people got a chance to hear the whole story. So if that feels okay with yourself.
That is fine. I'm more than happy to do that with you. Do you want me to start from the beginning?
I was just going to say, where do you want to start?
Very good place to start, as they say in The Sound of Music. It was 2009. I was living a crazy, hectic life working for STV. It was the year that Susan Boyle shot to fame. I'll never forget it.
Wow.
And I spent a summer kind of chasing her around, to covering that story, which was massive, covering, festivals and things like that. So life was busy. I went on holiday with my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, and when I look back at pictures, I don't look well on that holiday, and I remember having a really swollen mouth and not being able to eat properly, and I just looked really run down.
But then with such a busy life and so much going on, it must have taken a wee bit of time for you to start thinking maybe there's something else going on here.
I didn't think, I just thought that was it. I was run down. But I went to the doctors, and I think because I was feeling so just not right. And I think I had a lump under my arm initially. And I was asked if I wore deodorant, which I did. And the doctor said to me, "Oh, don't wear spray deodorant. That's what that'll be."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough. But
not what you would be expecting.
Not what I was expecting. Didn't even feel it. Anyway, things didn't improve, and I went back, and they said we're going to do some blood tests, just to rule out maybe because I was having kind of stomach issues and things. We'll look at like IBS, Crohn's, all that kind of stuff. Let's see where we're going with this. So they did blood tests in the morning. I went back to work that afternoon, and my palms were really sweaty, and every time I went to stand up, I felt like I was going to collapse. And so I phoned the doctor and said, something's not right. And they said, "Oh, come down immediately," which at the time, again, I didn't think, but probably was quite unusual to be told that by your GP. So I went down. I had bought a flat in the West End of Glasgow, and I was living with my parents at that time as I was doing it up, and my mum and dad were on holiday, so my friend came with me. She worked near where I lived, and she came with me, and I went into the doctors, and he said, what's your symptoms? And I told him, and he said, well, the blood tests have come back and it doesn't look good. And so that was like an absolute bolt out the blue, because it hadn't even crossed my mind.
Complete shock.
And I said, well, what is it? And he said, it's cancer.
Wow.
And I said, am I going to die? And he said, we all die, dear. And that was his kind of initial response, which, very true, but it wasn't what I wanted to hear. It was that we're going to get to the bottom of this. There are lots of things that can be done, that kind of thing. And so ran out. I remember screaming in the waiting room, and my friend came in and she kind of took everything in, because it was like a blur. It was everything just went into slow-mo almost.
I think when you're going in there expecting to get told you maybe are a wee bit anemic or
that was it.
You need to eat better or you need to take more. When you're young and you're so active and fit and you're not expecting it to be that, to go from it's bad news to, well, we're all going to die at some point is a very short span of time to try and get your head round what's been said to you.
And as soon as you hear that word, we've spoken about that so many times on this podcast, no matter with things changing or whatever, as soon as you hear that word, it's still terrifying.
Absolutely.
And there was an advert, I think it was for, it was either for Marie Curie or Macmillan or something a few years ago. And they kind of showed people being diagnosed. A setup, it was actors. But it was that thing of they kind of slow-moed it as they were told. And that was that exact feeling. I just felt my world literally turn on its head in that minute. And thank goodness my friend was a medicinal scientist. So she was able to take everything in. Yeah. And, we came away. We didn't know at that point what type of cancer it was. The doctor mentioned bone marrow. And it wasn't until later I thought, leukemia, because I'd kind of heard that before. But I was to go back to the hospital the next day and kind of get a more thorough kind of discussion about it and what was going to be the treatment plan. And that was literally the worst 24 hours of my life. I had to phone my mum and dad, who were on holiday, and say, I've got cancer. Obviously, they are terrified. Phoned my boss. I won't be on work tomorrow. I've got cancer. I just remember all these phone calls. It was horrendous. Phone Stephen, my boyfriend, as well. But long story short, we went to hospital the next day, and I remember I went to Stop Hill initially, and they gave me a cup of tea, and they said, right, what have you been told and what are your fears? And I said to them, I've got cancer. Am I going to die? And they were like, there's so much that can be done nowadays. Yeah. We've got this in hand, where this is going to be the treatment plan. They just immediately reassured me. Mm-hmm. And you can't, not everyone is going to survive it. You're not looking for a miracle, but some kind of comfort in that somebody's going to help you. There are things that can be done is so, so important. Just that manner, I think, in the way you're told. So that was a massive weight off my mind. And I was referred to the Beatson then, and I met this wonderful doctor called Tessa Hollyoak, Professor Tessa Hollyoak, who has made a lasting impact on my life. Like, I credit her with my life, basically. She was an absolute whirlwind, like one of those beyond genius people who's a doctor and a top scientist at the Beatson, and she's responsible, I think, for many of the revolutionary drugs that I've been on and that people have been on that have helped us live a normal life. And I immediately felt so safe in her hands and in the hands of the Beatson because they were so on it. And it was like, here's your treatment plan, and we're going to try oral chemotherapy. So I was on tablets rather than having to go in. And I was there every 2 weeks or so initially. And it was tough because I was really ill. At the start, I had insomnia. I've never watched so many episodes of Don't Tell the Bride in my life because I just wanted something that was like, it had nothing sad in it, that was just silly, nothing serious. I just needed to watch kind of nice things. And because I had insomnia, I was up during the night watching that. People
sometimes talk about their chemo box set. So what was it they watched? Because you just need something to help get you through those hours, get you through those days. And as you say, something that will distract you, take your head away from all those other thoughts that you've got on. So there's a lot of people that will talk about their chemo box set and what got them through.
That was mine, Don't Tell the Bride. It was just episode after episode. And I think Erin and Daniel that we've had on the podcast, they said theirs was Still Game, which was another good one. It is, it's just those kind of funny, light-hearted things that take your mind off it for a while. But after kind of 6 months or so, I got into the rhythm of the medication, and my cancer markers started to come down and everything was kind of a bit more controlled. And I went back to work at that point. STV, I worked for STV, still work for STV. They were incredible. They were so supportive. And I would say that to any employer out there, if you can say to your employee, take all the time you need.
Yeah.
Don't switch off your emails. Don't think about work. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But that was a massive help to me because I could just get on with kind of getting better or getting into the routine before having to think of work.
It's interesting because your treatment almost becomes your full-time job. You've got so many appointments and your weeks become marked by bloods on this day, appointment on that day. So it can be quite hard to think about how you fit anything else in round about that.
It takes over your life and you're trying to get your head around it. And I remember having this folder with every bit of paperwork I could get and, all the flyers and everything in it. But slowly but surely I kind of found my way, and the Beatson was a massive, massive part of that. And yeah, it was that those 6 months initially were tough. I got to a point again, maybe like a year or so into it, where my results, the kind of cancer markers plateaued. They didn't quite get as low as they wanted. So they changed my drugs. I did a drug trial and we managed to get things on track. And that has literally been my life for the past 16 years now, which is crazy. I can't really remember a time before cancer was in my life, which is really strange. And when I go to the Beatson, it just feels like such a part of me now, which is weird to think. And I go every 3 months for checkups now, and I'm actually off medication at the moment and staying really well. So I'm there every 3 months to be monitored. And the eve of that 3-monthly appointment is terrifying because it brings back the reality, and you wonder where your results going to be at. But I step into the Beatson, I treat myself to scone and a cup of tea on that day because calories don't count when you're in the hospital. And there's a weird sense of comfort, I think, because everyone's got your back. You look around and there are so many sad stories, but there are so many positive ones as well. And everyone, the volunteers in the cafe are amazing. You guys are amazing. It's a strange thing to say, but it's not a frightening or a horrible place to be. It's a real comforting place for me to be, I think.
I think there's so many people talk about being so scared to come along to the hospital for the first time.
Because the Beatson is a cancer hospital, so it's almost like you're admitting you're ill. It's the reality of being ill.
And it does, and I think coming along for the first time, it's about that very visual reminder of the fact that you've now become, I'm doing with ear quotes here, a cancer patient. But and it makes you start to think about who you are and what that means for you. But to come in and have, such committed clinical teams, our NHS colleagues are just phenomenal in what they do day in and day out. And as you said, nobody can make you any promises or any guarantees other than we're going to be here with you and we're going to do everything that we possibly can to help you to be as well as you can possibly be. And hopefully, if possible, depending on your diagnosis, cancer-free, but if not cancer-free, to live as well as you can. And I think that gives people a real sense of comfort and security. And then you see so much of life's emotions played out in the hospital as well. And there's joy and there's sadness and there's just wee moments that help to bring all of that anxiety back down. And that's when it becomes part of your life. As you were saying, it becomes so much more familiar to you.
It really does. And as a young woman, when I was diagnosed, I mean, I guess for men as well, but I think particularly for women in their 20s or 30s, there are a lot of questions. We're discussing another podcast about hair and stuff, so am I going to lose my hair? But fertility, so can I have children? And that was a massive thing for me because, I was in my 20s and still loving partying and, it wasn't kind of on my radar at that point, but I knew I wanted children and I didn't know how that was going to play out. And I remember asking Professor Hollyoak and she said, oh, well, we've taken people through it before and we'll cross that bridge, but you should be fine. And so it carried on, the cancer, and into my 30s, I thought, right, now I want to try for a child. And so that brought a whole other thing because although I was doing really well, at that point I had to come off my drugs to try. And I thought it would be a case of just coming off and seeing how long it takes and that would be it. But about 6 months into that, I remember going for an appointment and taking my mum along with me. They were checking my bloods, I think again, maybe every 2 weeks at that point. And I knew the cancer was slightly increasing. But this time when I went along, Professor Hollyoak said, you need to go back on your drugs and stop trying, because the cancer is suddenly increasing so rapidly that what could happen is if you get pregnant, you could get to 6 months and we have to decide whether we save you or save the baby.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that moment, because she was so professional and so incredible. But I had got to know her because I was also I hosted some events for her and things, and she was always so professional, but she became like a friend as well, which was amazing. And I remember her kind of getting almost emotional, and she was like, we can't do that, we can't. And for me, that was one of the most difficult points, because at that point I thought, cancer has already taken away so much from me, to then take away my chance of having a family. I mean, I was devastated, absolutely. And like, again, I remember going home and just being in floods of tears and not knowing what to do. And I got quite upset, and I was like, it's my decision if I want to do it, and my mum and Stephen saying like, you cannot do this, like we can't let you do that.
I mean, that's so hard, because having a family is something that you associate with happiness and joy, and you get to a certain age where you see so many of your friends and family and neighbours, and you would never grudge them that. You're happy for them and you share their joy. But you must have been angry at one point to think, I've already had to deal with so much, and I've had to make so many difficult decisions. Why am I having to make this decision?
It was another massive, it just felt another blow, like an absolute, it was like, when am I going to get a break here? This is horrendous. And the break came for me, thankfully, in the form of my sister-in-law, who offered to be a surrogate for us, which was something I thought, only the Kardashians or, rich people in America do. Hadn't really ever considered it to be an option.
And how did that conversation come about? Was that something that had been suggested to you as an option?
No, Jane, my lovely sister-in-law, had researched it and came and asked to speak to Stephen and I, and said, look, I've had my 2 children, don't want any more. I've been reading up about this. I could do this for you. I could carry your child, which is like the most selfless, like incredible gift you can ever offer anyone. And so then we went down this path of these few years seem like a total blur, but
I'm not surprised.
With the help of Professor Hollyoak and the team at the Beatson, and then a team at the Royal, we went through like parts IVF, so because we used my egg, and so it's she's biologically our child, but Jane was going to carry her, and there was years of that, because we were able to do that on the NHS because of my diagnosis, which again I don't think many people know you can do. So that was really important to me to speak about that, to make people more aware that that was an option. But it hadn't been done that often, so there was a whole load of, it was a learning process for everyone. And basically there was a few years of going through things, and a few times it didn't work, and I had basically given up hope. I thought, well, there's our opportunity gone. We were down to our last fertilised egg, and it wasn't, they're kind of graded in quality, it wasn't the highest one, so but they thought, right, we'll try it and see. And so it was put into Jane, and 2 weeks went by and she was to do a pregnancy test, and I had been in London at a wedding. Stephen had been on a stag do, and we were due to phone her that night, and I just thought, I didn't even give it. I just thought, this is not going to work. There's no point. We'll do it out of formality. But before we got to phone her, the doorbell went, and Stephen looked out and he was like, Jane's parked the car, whatever, she's coming up the driveway. And we opened the door, and she had the positive pregnancy test there.
That's just so lovely.
And it was just like, we could not believe it, like absolutely couldn't believe it. And still, like, those first 3 months, it just didn't seem real. Every time I thought, something's going to go wrong or whatever. But as it went on, it didn't. And, basically, we got to the 9 months and we had our beautiful baby girl, thanks to Jane. It never felt weird, which is such a strange thing, even though someone else is having your baby. Felt terrible because we were sitting eating sandwiches, she's in labour. But it never felt odd because she was our child, and Jane is a big part of her life as an auntie, as is my own sister, and we're just lucky that we have this amazing family network. But Penelope is every inch hers, and you look at her every day, even when she is in her little minxie madam moods, which is quite often. There's not a day goes by where you're not like, I just love her so much. She is amazing. She's incredible, and we've not told her yet. She's 5. We've not told her about the surrogacy thing, but we will do in the future, and she'll know that Mummy's tummy was too sick to carry her. So Auntie Jane did. And that's been really lovely, actually, because Jane's sons know. They're a wee bit older, I think like 10 and 12 or so. But they've always known, obviously, because their mum was pregnant. But children just accept it, no questions asked. And she's called Penelope Jane Tessa Ford. So Jane after Jane and Tessa after Professor Hollyoak, who very sadly lost her own journey with cancer. So she never got to see that happened, but she was such an important part of that journey that I always hope she knows, or that her husband knows that there's this amazing, cheeky, spirited, shall we say, little 5-year-old out there, thanks in part to her.
I mean, goodness, Laura, that is just an emotional roller coaster. There's so many highs in there and so many lows. And you've been talking, and I keep hearing these amazing people that have been in your life to support you, between your parents and Stephen as your partner, now husband, and then obviously your sister-in-law as well. Has that been what got you through? I mean, how did you keep going through all of that? Because it must have been times where you had to dig really, really deep.
It's so hard. It's almost like a roller coaster, and you can't get off it, because once you get that diagnosis, you've just got to go with it. It feels like, and there are constant highs and lows, and there are big periods where it's fine and cancer doesn't play a big part in your life, but then there can be a curveball where medication stops working, or like that, the fertility stuff took a difficult turn. So when I look back over the past almost 16 years, I'm like, wow, that was a lot. But on the same hand, I have had the most amazing experiences. I've got to host and take part in amazing events, meet the most incredible people through the Beatson. I've got friends. It's something, we all go through it, but especially when you become part of the cancer community, if you like, you meet friends and you lose friends, and that's really, really tough. I've had a great friend, Laura, who was a similar age to me, and we lost her during COVID, and it's so difficult, and there is a guilt with that. I think we've spoken about that a lot in the podcast as well. You're like, why am I the one that gets to carry on? But then I guess it makes you more determined to live your life to the full. It's been tough, but also, I've done the most incredible things, and I've got the most amazing little girl, and I feel very honoured to be part of the Beatson community, and especially because it is somewhere that means so much to so many people, and it's a very, sounds a bit silly, but it's a very loving place. There's such a warmth, and to see everything that the charity does has been amazing. So it's been difficult, but it's definitely it's taught me a lot in life, and I've had to lean on other people, and I've had to lean on doctors and nurses, and now see a nurse, Ruth, at the hospital every 3 months, and she is just brilliant as well. And any questions, no matter how ridiculous they are, you know, she's been amazing. And another big thing for me has been being able to share my story. My job working in STV means I've got a bit of a public profile. So the people that have come to me and said, oh, like, your stories really helped me because I've been, you know, that's given me hope. Or I've had people that have gone through surrogacy, maybe because they've read a bit about our story. That's the things that make you think, God, it's so worthwhile, and it's so worthwhile to share your story.
I think it is, and part of the reason why we really like the podcast and we really value people coming along and sharing their stories is how much it can help others. Not everyone's story is a good outcome. Not a lot of times there's sadness in there, but every single story will resonate with so many individuals. And I think, you know, you're talking not just about your experience of diagnosis and treatment, but some of those unanticipated effects that it has on your life. You know, when you're being given a diagnosis of cancer when you're young, your fertility won't be the first thing that you're necessarily thinking of. And actually you might not be thinking about what ongoing trials that's going to give to you in your life. So I think to hear people like yourself so generously share their experiences and talk in that very inspirational way, I have to say. Do you know how you've spoken tonight? Well, I know mean a lot to a lot of people out there listening who are thinking, wow, you know, that might not be my exact challenge, but, you know, Laura's been through so much, and it's about going and asking for help. It's about talking to the right people. It's about asking the question and keeping going day in and day out. So it means so much. And I think to create a conversation around about this and to use your platform is incredibly important. And it's very giving of you because it's putting a lot out there, isn't it?
It's putting a lot out there, but you get so much back. I think, and I know it's not for everyone. We've heard from people here who haven't told, you know, or didn't tell friends or family, and I think I can completely see why as well, because you're dealing with so much. And I guess for some people as well, it's okay for you to deal with it, but you don't want to put it on other people. And also there's a reality when you tell other people that everyone knows. And you know, I still get people going like, how are you? And all that. And I totally get that. Like I would never criticize anyone because it's difficult. You don't know what to say, you know. But we gosh, in work we have a very dark sense of humour about it. We've turned it into, you know, I'm always demanding cups of tea and I've got cancer, and they're like, oh, we've heard it all before. You know, it's all that kind of stuff. And my colleagues have been amazing. They really have been so good throughout it. And my friends as well. Like, I've been really, really lucky. But in sharing my story, that really has helped me. I've found that so therapeutic. And it's, when people get in touch to say they've been touched by it or it's helped them, then that means the world to me. It really, really does.
Well, thank you, Laura. That has just been really inspirational to hear you speak, and really appreciate your honesty and your openness. And I'm sure it's going to have meant a lot to a lot of people who are listening. And apart from our thanks, just wishing you and your beautiful family lots more happy Christmases, lots more walks in Loch Lomond, and lots more moments of joy.
Thank you so much. And it's the least I can do to share my story when people have been so open and honest with us. And if you do anything, listen to some of these podcasts, listen to all of them.
Absolutely.
Because every story you can't help be touched by, inspired by, and we're so grateful to all the people involved. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If you or someone you know is affected by cancer and needs support or advice, then visit beatsoncancercharity.org.